General Motors files for a landmark IPO. That's an initial public offering. In case you don't know, General Motors is not any longer on the Dow Jones Industrial Average. They do not have a stock anywhere in the New York Stock Exchange or on any other stock exchange at this time because they are practically a government agency. But that is in the changing stages and phases of going from public sector to private sector, and they're going to offer the public some stock. IPOs are when they sell stock, when a company starts selling stock on the stock market. And that's what General Motors is trying to do. This is published Wednesday, 18 August 2010 by Reuters CNBC. General Motors filed for an initial public offering of stock Wednesday, clearing a key hurdle toward repaying taxpayers for a controversial bailout just over a year after its bankruptcy. Morgan Stanley down 20 cents to 25.72. JP Morgan down 26 cents per share from 36.88. Bank of America, Merrill Lynch. What are they together now? $12.87 unchanged, and Citigroup $3.75, and that is unchanged upon hearing the news. These four companies have been selected as the lead underwriters for the IPO by the top U.S. automaker. They are the ones who will be issuing the stock. How come Goldman Sachs isn't in there? Goldman Sachs hates JP Morgan, man. And so does the government of the United States. The United States government owes its existence in no small part to JP Morgan, the man himself, JP Morgan, who practically paid for all of the United States government expenses back at the turn of the century from the 1800s to the 1900s. Like 2-3 years in a row, JP Morgan paid for everything. He floated the whole government by himself, and they are eternally indebted to JP Morgan. Hence they resent that, much in the way that somebody who has a bank mortgage or a car loan and the payments that come with it, or even like if they've bought a sofa from Rent-A-Center, they resent that person, that company that gave them what they wanted and said, pay me back later. They resent that, and the government resents JP Morgan in the same way, as they do pretty much any bank, and as they right now especially are trying to get you to do to all the banks. Remember a few weeks ago when they came out with the Chevy Volt? General Obama Motors came out with the Chevy Volt, the battery-operated vehicle that has a battery that has a 40-mile range. The vehicle also has a backup motor that has a 385-mile range. So, out of the people who buy the Volt, how many do you think are going to be running the battery as opposed to how many will run the reserve motor? Yeah, I thought you'd say that. Furthermore, think about the economics of this whole thing. The rebate. Supposedly, you will get $7,500 off when you purchase a $41,000 Chevy Volt. Tiny little car, seating for 4, not 5, but 4. 4 and only 4. Small people. This is a company that is run by the government, so if the government doesn't have any money, how are they gonna give you $7,500 off on the car? The answer is they're going to print the money. You see, for every car that they sell, they can just go to the Treasury Department, to wherever the General Motors bank account is located, and just keystroke in a dollar figure. Because it certainly won't be any printed money. This administration hasn't printed anything. They've legislated into existence 4 times as much money as they say George W. Bush was so wasteful and drunken sailorly about. But they haven't printed a bill. Not one piece of paper. It's all counterfeit, cashless currency. Every time somebody buys a Chevy Volt, $7,500 is going to be just printed into a bank account somewhere in Washington. It's kind of a, what do you say, surreptitious way of making more money. But anyway, let's continue with this article, shall we? General Motors' initial filing with the U.S. securities regulators did not say just how many shares would be sold, nor did they give an expected price range for what will likely be one of the biggest IPOs ever. Why? It might be historic. It'll be General Motors' second stock offering, which makes you wonder, well, this is the way it went. I mean, they had stock before, and Obama just booted all those shareholders out. He said, here, man, take this, as opposed to whatever it was worth, and their dividend, and he told them to go get lost and get fucked. This is the way he treats the rich, greedy, fat cat Wall Street investor, and just sends them on their ass down the street and redistributes their wealth to labor unions, like the UAW, who now owns a major portion of General Motors, and they can't wait to unload it on these suckers who are gonna buy their fucking stock again. Alright? So, this ought to be a real profitable enterprise for Morgan Stanley, JP Morgan, the Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, and Citigroup, and whoever suckers, patriotic investors are willing to invest in General Motors. One more thing, General Motors, if you're going to buy a car, maybe you should get a General Motors car, because whether or not you buy a GM, you're paying for it. Whether you buy a car at all, you're paying for this car to be built. Okay, shall we continue? General Motors filed for an IPO of up to $100 million. That does not represent the full amount that General Motors hopes to raise. Of course it don't. $100 million is nothing to these people. This is what people familiar with the situation have told Reuters. General Motors could raise up to $20 billion in its IPO. So the initial public offering is of $100 million. Okay, so they say, which means that $100 million, $10 million. It would have to be $10 a share to get $1 billion. 10. So it needs to be $200 a share. They're thinking they're gonna they're thinking that the stock price will eventually raise up to $200 a share, apparently. Because they're saying that General Motors could raise up to $20 billion. That means $200 a share. Okay, assuming that, well, if they started out at 100 million shares of $1 each, because 100 million times 200 is 20 billion. Now, attention is increasingly focused on the amount the IPO will raise, and if it will be enough, as some suggest it should be. Who is some people's kids, I don't know. They won't say who some is, although, you know, it's a news agency and people have a right to know, and they're supposed to be informing you. Yes, but some suggest that this should be enough to repay taxpayers who are on the hook for the controversial bailout. We're on the hook whether they get bailed out or not. Yeah, this will never go away, man. It's not going back to the private sector. Not for a long time, until somebody buys it, when we don't have a communist in the White House and a communist Congress, which is going to be a very long time from now, after a long war in which we'll probably all be killed. And this whole internet thing, that'll be just destroyed. It'll first be shut off so that we can't talk to each other, inform each other, or be informed. And the next thing that'll happen is the satellites will just get shot out of the sky, and the fucking cables under the ground will just be all bombed and uprooted and destroyed, just like all of our houses. But that's another material for another video. If General Motors is valued in the $60 billion to $70 billion range, that gets the taxpayer paid back, because that's what they've spent. That's what the taxpayers spent. But the question is that achievable for a company that is 1 year out of bankruptcy, said Brad Coulter, director of O'Keefe and Associates. Pick this guy out of the blue. Well, it makes a lot of sense, though. Personally, I think that they should wait and prove out their earnings, Coulter added. Oh, why do that, man? Why do that? Oh, man, Obama can't wait to unload this hot potato. Scott Sweet, senior managing partner of IPO Boutique, agreed General Motors has a lot to prove before investors should consider it a worthy investment. That's for damn sure. They haven't proved anything at all. They still have problems, and their problems are large, said Sweet. One of them specifically is in Europe. They missed the chance to sell Opel. As a result, they're losing several $100 million. It's an ongoing problem. It's an albatross right now. They're likely only going to be able to get dimes on the dollar for Opel now. Well, it serves them right, because that's what they did to all the GM and Chrysler shareholders. They brought in all these new managers, and they still could not clean it up. The automaker said it plans to list the shares on the New York Stock Exchange and the Toronto Stock Exchange. Trading in General Motors shares is expected to start between late October and Thanksgiving, which is the 4th Thursday in November. In case you didn't know, get your turkey now, while it's cheap and it's frozen. It'll be pennies on the dollar by the time Thanksgiving rolls around. It's just a speculation. Just a hot tip I'm offering you. A stock offering in late October would mean trading would start just before the November congressional elections. So what do you think the probability is of that happening? Of course, it would give a bump. It would give a sucker rally to the stock market, which would help the election. Watch them lay out all kinds of hope and change in October. That'll bump up the stock market, based on, oh, General Motors this, General Motors that. Nothing bad about General Motors, man, because they want you to participate in this IPO. The Obama administration wants to be able to cast the $50 billion General Motors bailout as a financial success in the face of public skepticism and Republican political opposition. They want to put their spin on it, of course. That's expected.